Okay, Chair, the meeting is now going live.
Okay, let me know when you want me to start.
Yep, ready to go.
Ready to go? Okay.
Ready to go.
Right. Good afternoon. Welcome to East Devon District Council's virtual Housing Review Board meeting on the 21st of January 2021. I'm your chair, Tony McCullum, and I would like to welcome anyone watching this meeting via live streaming. All participants here today are taking part remotely, and as well as being live streamed, the meeting is being recorded. So please bear in mind throughout, and may I remind you to be careful with your language. May I also remind members that the Code of Conduct applies throughout this meeting. We also reserve the right to remove and disconnect any participant who is disturbing the meeting by whatever means. Please turn off telephone devices or to silent. As the Housing Review Board meeting is dependent on internet connection and power supply, in the event of a break in the internet connection or power cut, please bear with us and we will try to reconnect. After 15 minutes, if we are not able to reconnect, we will consider the meeting adjourned and reconvene at a later date. Please check the community page on our website for details. Please make sure all microphones are muted when you are not speaking to avoid any background noise levels. Keep points short and do not repeat points that have already been made, and do not interrupt. If you wish to comment, please raise your electronic blue hand. All members have been sent the agenda for today's meeting. Any members of the public who want to view the agenda can do so by visiting our website www.eastdevon.co.uk. Sorry, eastdevon.gov.uk. We will now start the meeting by doing a roll call with the committee members here present. Can you please now unmute your microphone, and when you hear your name, please confirm by saying present. When you have confirmed you are present, please mute your microphone again. Over to you.
Councillor McCullum.
Present.
Councillor Chamberlain.
Present.
Councillor Hall.
Present.
Councillor Parr.
Present.
Councillor Taylor.
Present.
I've had apologies from Christine Drew. Cindy Collier.
Present.
I've also had apologies from Christine Morrison. So Peter Sullivan.
Present.
And Kat Summers.
Present.
I can confirm that we are court today. So we're moving on. Agenda number 1, public speaking. Before I hand over to Andrew, just really an announcement that we are looking at moving our start times for our future meetings on the new civic year in June to 10 a.m. Just making everyone aware that we are looking at moving to 10 a.m. as from June onwards. Andrew, I believe you want to say something. Is he here?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's just some sad news about one of our tenants. Many of you will have known. Marcus Masterson has recently sadly passed away. Marcus has been a key member of the Homelessness Strategy Review Group over the last few years. He's passed his views and opinions on in respect of our plans for tackling homelessness. So his contributions from a former service user perspective have been really greatly appreciated and have helped to shape our strategies. So along with Councillor Megan Armstrong, who has known Marcus for several years, we'd just like to acknowledge our appreciation of the contribution Marcus has made to our service over the years. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Duly acknowledged. There is no other public speaking I'm aware of. So we'll move on to agenda item 2, which is the minutes of the previous meeting. If anyone has a comment on the set of minutes from the 17th September 2020, please do so by raising your blue hand. If I have no blue hands raised, I will take this as an indication that you all agree with the minutes as of the previous meeting. Thank you. Any hands?
No blue hands raised.
No blue
Chair.
hands. Okay, I will take it that the minutes are hereby approved. Item number 3, apologies.
Okay, so I've received apologies from Christine Morrison and Christine Drew.
Okay, noted. Sorry, I'm just rearranging here. Okay, agenda number, where are we? 4, declarations of interest. Again, well, I think
Okay,
you're
so
doing that, sorry.
are these by roll call? So Councillor McCullum,
None declare.
Councillor Chamberlain,
Nothing to declare.
Councillor Hall,
My mum is a tenant and she uses Safeguard, and I'm also a Devon County councillor if that comes up in any topics. Thank you.
Councillor Parr,
None, thank you.
Councillor Taylor,
Nothing to declare.
Cindy Collier,
Sorry, yes, East Devon District Council tenant.
and Peter Sullivan,
Tenant of East Devon District Council.
and Kat Summers.
Sorry, tenant of the East Devon District Council.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. Item 5, matters of urgency. I'm not aware of any matters of urgency. No. Okay. Item 6, confidential exempt items. We do have one item on the agenda which needs to fall into that category, which is item number 18, last on the agenda. Others. Number 7, forward planning. And that is, sorry, I'm trying to catch up here. Forward planning, who's doing that?
That'll be Joe, won't it?
Joe. Sorry, my.
Yeah, that's just me. Not as much to say, Tony, actually. Thank you very much. We have moved a couple of the items that were down for January to March. So specifically the audit of the complaints, that's now going to be in March. Also in March, we will be having a report about the progress on the stock condition survey, and also on the progress of the Green Homes initiative, which is currently on the ground being delivered. So apart from the usual business, that's all we've got for the next meeting. But as you say, we will be moving current other meetings to 10 a.m. And I believe that Alethea has already sent out the dates for the next 6 months or so, which is brilliant.
Okay. Right, obviously, first invite any non-members to speak by raising their virtual hand. Once non-members have spoken, I will then invite members of the committee to speak. We have Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Chair. I've been asked by the portfolio holder for strategic planning, Councillor Ledger, to because he can't be here, he'll be late, to raise the matter of the decarbonisation, the funding announced by government, which he actually asked to be put on the forward plan at the last meeting. And if I look at the minutes, it was advised that this would be added to the forward plan to be brought to the November board meeting. As we know, the November board meeting was cancelled. So as Councillor Ledger can't be here, I just wanted to raise that and ask that it be added to the forward plan as soon as possible. Thanks. As was agreed.
Okay, Joe, you take care of that one, or who? John?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, okay. Absolutely. As you know, we are working on the zero carbon already. We've got some money and we're on the ground delivering the Green Home initiative as a result of the grant that we won just before Christmas. We've got a bid in for a second one, and that's exactly what we want to bring back in March. By the time we come back in March, we will be almost at completion of the first round of the Green Homes grant works, and hopefully we will have a second one in the pipeline, hopefully we might have some more news from central government about the big bid that will be coming out in 2022 as well. So we will definitely cover that in the March meeting.
Okay, nothing else on that one. Any members wish to speak? Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Chair. You know, with our conversation on the telephone recently, with what's been said, and we hopefully get it on the forward plan in the not too distant future, is about all housing providers, be it East Devon, be it housing associations, come together so we can have a cohesive approach to all those residents in East Devon. I know this is going to entail some work and already are stretched officers, but if we can get this put on the forward plan as soon as possible, would be greatly appreciated, more so for the people who we actually represent. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Any others wish to speak? Okay.
No more blue hands, Chair.
No more blue hands, and there's no recommendations for this one. Agenda number 8, Housing Service Plan. And I think that is John, I believe.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. If I may introduce this item. So this report presents our annual service plan, and it consists of a brief covering report and the service plan itself as an annex to the document, or to the agenda rather. So this is our annual process of reviewing service priorities, considering our achievements, looking at the challenges ahead and different ways of working, considering risks, the resources that we have available, and then go through a process of identifying key objectives for the year ahead. So the service plan is for 21-22, effectively starting in the new financial year. The process has given us an opportunity to align a service plan with the recently published statement of intent on the council's priorities, and reflects those ambitions in that statement of intent for more council homes, greener homes, reducing our carbon footprint that's just been mentioned, and addressing poverty, just to mention a few items. I think it's fair to say it's been an unusual year last year, with many interruptions to our plans and intentions as a result of the pandemic. This has brought a huge set of challenges for us around business continuity, tenant, staff and contractor welfare, as you might imagine. It was critical that we were able to mobilise safe systems of working to keep tenants safe, our homes safe and in good repair. And I'm really grateful to our contractors and partners whose support and ability to maintain near normal business under hugely difficult circumstances has been quite a feature of the year. Core business is central to the plan, and we must continue to deliver the basics of our service whilst aspiring to continuously improve what we do. We, of course, must maintain tenants' homes in good condition, safe and fit for purpose. That's a big feature of the plan. We must manage allocations well. We must manage compliance with tenancy conditions, collect tenants' rent and support vulnerable tenants. These are just some of the basics that are reflected in the service plan. The plan itself reflects the important work of our teams, our housing options team, Home Safeguard, and the importance of the enabling role, particularly if we're to deliver an enhanced amount of new affordable housing. For the eagle-eyed amongst you, you may have noticed that private sector housing is no longer in our housing service plan because we transferred that activity to our environmental health colleagues last year, and you'll see private sector housing in the environmental health and car parks service plan. The plan itself predicts probably another difficult year ahead, with significant challenges remaining around business continuity, staff recruitment and retention, staff welfare, and continuing to improve our services. I think it's fair to say, and hopefully the plan reflects, that housing is a political priority of the council, As I say, the recent statement of intent from the council highlights the theme of better homes and communities, and that again is sprinkled throughout the service plan. Want to focus on the future on tenant and building safety, tenant satisfaction and welfare, decarbonisation, meeting housing need and delivering more social housing. We have a really important role to play in alleviating poverty, community development and support for community and voluntary organisations, which is also in the plan. We need to support our vulnerable tenants and take the opportunity to upgrade Home Safeguard, ensuring we've got greater resilience in our Home Safeguard service that so many people rely on. So the service plan this year has a big dose of realism due to the pandemic, but I would suggest it's also ambitious and trying to ensure that we deliver core services well, whilst taking the opportunity to develop new services and new initiatives in year. Happy to answer any questions, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, we'll put it to the non-members first, please. I'll go by my list here, which is Councillor Miller, I believe.
Yeah, thank you. Very quickly, could I ask John, through you, Chair, what the original rationale was for moving private sector housing over to environmental health? Because I'm just aware about how much pressure environmental health are under in terms of recruitment and staffing levels at the moment, and just how important our regulation and interventions within the private rented sector is when it comes to good outcomes for our residents. More people live in the private rented sector than they do the social rented sector, which is of course an indictment on the current and previous successive governments. So John, I'd just like to know why that was. Thank you.
If I may, through you, Chair. So some years ago, when I first joined the council, the private sector housing team were in environmental health. A lot of the officers are environmental health officers. There's a natural synergy with environmental health. I fought quite hard to move it into housing, to create a comprehensive housing service. And then, as these circular things often occur, there was a good argument put that it perhaps could transfer back in order to balance up some of the responsibilities. I was relaxed about that because both service areas come under my ownership, if you like, my portfolio, if you like. So I could ensure that both services continue to work well together. So we've integrated them into environmental health. But hopefully, and I know again this is a council priority, we will have no silo working and the two services will work well together.
Thank you, John. Thank you. I don't see any other non-members, so I'll put it over to Peter.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to John for this very comprehensive plan. In the past, you've actually had tenants with you when you've been putting this plan together, because most of it is about tenants. Just unfortunate this year, I don't know why, but I don't remember any tenants being invited to any of the meetings about the new service plan for next year. And I'm just wondering why that was.
That's a good question, Peter. A good challenge for me. So that was entirely my fault, and my excuse would be because we should, and we have adopted that in the past, as you know, yes. But we didn't have a physical service planning day such that we normally do. We normally meet somewhere, don't we? A whole group of us.
That's correct.
We had a fairly a curtailed service planning exercise and run up, because we were, and this is not just me, but this is all of my service lead and strategic lead colleagues in the council, we were very focused on the pandemic and delivering, continuing to deliver services. So we had a very much reduced virtual session, which essentially was focused on getting the report done by the deadline that we were working to. And that included chair, portfolio holder, and Joe, I think the managers, I can't remember. Next year, I'm hoping we'll go back to normal. In following that process, I was conscious that this Housing Review Board meeting is our chance to have tenant input, but that doesn't meet our normal requirements, as you rightly point out.
Thank you, John.
Can I just come back on that?
Yeah, of course you can.
Just to say that there is, at the moment, because of what is happening with COVID, etc., I'll let John have that one this time. Next time, I'll be watching him. But on a more serious note, we've got lots of changes coming forward next year, or even starting this year. We've got changes to how the Ombudsman sees that we go through complaints procedures, etc. And then we've got the white paper, which we're all going to have to adhere to. And I just thought that there was so much happening. So perhaps an invite could have been done to at least one tenant who would be available to sit in on those meetings with you. But like I said, on this occasion, I'll let John have that one, but I'm watching him.
With our apologies, Peter.
Okay.
Okay, Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Chair. Interesting reading through the report. I felt it was balanced and it was very ambitious, especially during the most challenging time since the First and Second World War. But I was very, very pleased to see it covered obviously the areas of poverty, homelessness, welfare, safe systems of work. Incredibly well done to all. I hope all the team working within this portfolio are okay, and I'm sure that John will be able to give a guys. Are we finding it incredibly challenging at the moment? Have we got enough resources to deliver this plan going forward? And if not, have we got a recruitment plan in place? So thank you very much, one and all.
Thank you. John, do you want to come back on that one?
Yeah, if I may, Chair, I mean, I think it's fair to say that, like everybody in the country at the moment, we're feeling the pressure, but the team have responded incredibly well to keep the show on the road, and I'm personally grateful for that. And I know tenants have been, when we've been in touch with them, our contractors have done a fantastic job for us as well under very trying circumstances. We are doing our best to maintain morale in the service. All the managers are working incredibly hard to ensure that staff welfare is right up top of their agenda, because we rely entirely upon our team. Very proud of the team. We've got a great motivated and committed team. We've had some movement in our team, and so we have got some vacancies that we're recruiting to as quickly as possible to fill those key vacancies. And in terms of resources, we'll come on to talk about the budget in a moment. We do have sufficient resources in terms of financial resources to ensure that we have sufficient capacity, staff numbers, if you like, in the main. And the ability to deliver the programs that we have proposed through the service plan. Thank you.
Thank you, John. I don't see any other blue hands up. So we come to recommendations, which I assume is to approve the housing.
You want me to just cover that one?
Yes, please.
The idea is that legal do that.
Okay.
So the recommendation then is you've considered the housing service plan, you've commented upon it, and the recommendation is to seek your approval that the plan for 2021 is approved to go to council.
Okay, Chair, so if you'd like me to conduct the vote.
Yes, please.
Board members, when I call out your name, if you could just say whether you are for or against or you're abstaining from the vote, please. So we'll start with you, Chair, Councillor McCullum.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Chamberlain.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Hall.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Parr.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
For.
Thank you. Cindy Collier, please.
For.
Thank you. Peter Sullivan, please.
4.
Thank you, Peter. And Kat Summers, please. Thank you, Kat. You were muted, but I can see you. I can lip read. Thank you. That's no problem. Chair, that's carried unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Now we move on to agenda number 9, Housing Review Accounts Budget, which is over to Rob.
If I can, Chair, it's Simon Davey.
Oh, Simon, sorry.
No, that's okay. It should have been Rob. Rob, unfortunately, off sick today, so you've got me instead. I apologise for that.
I'm sure you'll manage.
Chair, may I intervene a second, please?
Certainly.
For the benefit of everybody, could we have the page numbers when the officers are going through this, please? Because it's jumbled around a little bit.
Certainly, Chair.
Okay.
So this is looking at next year's budget for the housing revenue account. If you look at page 43 of your agenda, that's where the meat of the report starts, if you like. Just to give the committee a bit of background in terms of a draft budget has been presented to Cabinet at the beginning of the month. That included all the budgets and capital budgets for the council. It then goes out for consideration by the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, who met last week to review the draft budget, but importantly also comes to the Housing Review Board for your consideration on that housing revenue account side of the budget. So your recommendations following this report will go back to Cabinet on the 3rd of February, the minutes from this meeting, and then Cabinet will make their considerations and put forward a complete budget to Council, who then meet and set the council tax. So looking at the report, the housing revenue account budget will take into account the service plans that you've just approved. So the resources needed in delivering those service plans will be built into the budget. But also what should underpin and has underpinned the budget for the housing revenue account is the business plan. But that business plan now is getting out of date, needs to be revised and brought back to you. But there are a number of pieces of work that need to be done in order to give us a business plan that we can then work up the finances behind. So in 2.1 of your report, I've just highlighted some of the considerations we need to take into account. One of the big items, which I think will appear on your future agenda, is a full condition survey of all our stock. So in order to be able to produce future budgets over the next 30 years, the affordability of that programme, trying to capture the climate change aspirations you have, and also right to buy replacements, those sorts of elements, we really need to be able to start planning our medium-term and long-term financial picture. That work's been delayed slightly for reasons you can appreciate with the pandemic, but work is now beginning on the sort of building stones, if you like, to build up into that business plan. So next year's budget that's proposed for you is still positive in it's a bit of a standstill budget in terms of what it provides, but there are still resources in there to keep the stock in good condition, to allow for improvements in your various programs, and does provide an actual surplus. So if you look at your, in 2.2, it mentions the rents to be set for next year. So the rent increase in line with government policy will be 1.5%. that will bring in income to you of 17.8 million. So everything in the housing revenue account is paid for by tenants' rents. So that's 17.8 million. If we then go through the budget in terms of all the expenditure items, and a quick overview is shown in 2.4 of the report on page 45. So if you take all the expenditure, take the income I've mentioned from rents, you're left with a surplus of 984,000. That sounds like a lot of money, just under £1 million, but that's normal that we've seen in the last few years in setting the housing revenue account budget, in that what it gives you is that surplus to be able to decide on priorities during the year, and they will focus around your right to buy replacement schemes, how you wish to use revenue to help support that. It will focus on climate change measures and also essential sort of improvement works. But those various reports of how you want to look at that surplus during the year will come back to you for your consideration. But the core budget does allow, as I say, for standstill position in terms of it does allow for all the resourcing in terms of staff that your strategic leads talked about, and the normal replacement improvement programme. If we take that 985,000 surplus and consider the overall budget, it leaves you with a housing revenue account balance in 2.7 of the report at 3.1 million. So assuming you spend that 985,000 on priorities that you sanctioned during the year, you're still left with a housing revenue account balance of 3.1, which is a healthy position. That's within the top of your adopted range. So if any emergencies crop up during the year, you should be assured that you have a healthy balance there that can deal with that. In addition, you also have 1.6 million in a housing revenue account debt volatility fund that was deemed a good strategy in terms of if things should suddenly dip, income suddenly dries up. Maybe, we're in the pandemic at the moment. Rent collection, I'm sure you'll come on to, is doing well, really well at the moment. But that could have taken a significant dip. You still have commitments in your budget in terms of debt repayments, and that volatility fund could help you meet those debt repayments without having to influence your improvement program and repairs program. So in terms of strategy going forward, so I think you can be content with next year's budget. Happy to take questions, but there is plenty of work to do on your next housing revenue account business plan and how that influences your future budgets. As I say, happy to take questions. With the absence of Rob, I might be relying on Joe Garther and Graham Baker to help me on that, but happy to take questions, Chair.
Okay, thank you, sir. Right. Any non-members wish to ask a question? Blue hands, please. We have Councillor Gizzard.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for being late. I've just come straight from another meeting. It's just a question on page 44, where it says, undertake a full condition survey to inform future programme costs. I should declare an interest, Chair. I am a council tenant. Will that also include then a look at the double glazing that houses have? Because obviously double glazing was put in many years ago, and quite a few properties now are showing signs that the gas permeation has diminished and there's condensation in between the two panes. So will that be looked at as well at the same time?
Who's taking that one, Joe or Simon? Or Joe will take it.
If I may, Chair. Yes, it will.
Thank you.
Full stock condition survey contains every single component of the building. So right from the foundations up to the roof, including chimneys, kitchens, bathrooms, everything.
Thank you.
Joe, any questions from non-members? No. Any members got any questions? Blue hands, please. No, I don't see any. So we'll move on to the recommendations next. Sorry, I lost it.
Yeah, so the recommendation,
recommendation.
Chair, is that the draft revenue and capital estimates are adopted before forwarding back to Cabinet for recommendation to Council.
Okay, Chair, so far
Yep.
through the vote. As before, board members, please, when I call out your name, can you please say if you are for or against or abstaining from the proposal? I'll start with you, Chair. Councillor McCullum.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Chamberlain.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Hall.
4.
Thank you. Councillor Parr.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
For.
Councillor Taylor. Thank
For.
you. Thank you very much. Cindy Collier, please.
For.
Thank you. Peter Sullivan.
For.
Thank you, Peter. And Kat Summers, please.
For.
Thank you. That's great. Thank you, Kat. Chair, that's carried unanimously. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, moving on to item 10, right to buy, which I believe is Joe.
Thank you, Chair. This report was brought forward to raise awareness of the challenges that have been presented this year, particularly in spending the right to buy receipts. Unfortunately, money this year will be needing to be returned to central government, and on top of that, we will also incur an interest charge on any monies returned. Obviously, there are significant mitigations as to why this has occurred this year. Not only has the spend been almost twice what we would expect to spend in your average year, with it being 5.8 million this year, we've also obviously been in the grip of a global pandemic, which has had a really drastic effect on the property market. And then that was then compounded by the fact that the government announced a stamp duty holiday in May, which also had a huge impact on the amount of competition that we faced when we were trying to acquire new properties. So what we've ended up with really is that we made an appeal to local government, to national government, along with a lot of other local authorities, and asked that they relax the conditions that we have to comply with in order to spend the right to buy receipts. Normally we have to spend them on a quarterly basis, which is incredibly difficult to do. Anyway, as a result of that lobbying by local authorities, they did relax the rules to some extent, and we were able to treat last year as a whole year. So instead of having to spend quarter 1, quarter 2 and quarter 3 and quarter 4, we've been allowed to carry all of those sums together and just have one deadline of March the 31st, 2021. So during that has helped a lot, but to be honest, we don't feel it went far enough really. But during the year, we have managed to purchase 19 properties to a total value of 3.06 million. But obviously, that does leave us with a shortfall that we need to repay to government of 844,000, plus, unfortunately, an interest of 121,000 on top of that. So although it's disappointing, it needs to be noted that this is the first time that EDDC have ever had to pay any monies back since 2012, when this agreement was first broached. In most other local authorities, including some of our sister authorities local to us, Exeter, etc., this is habitual for them. They are paying back monies every year. So I think that the team has done incredibly well in managing to spend every receipt so far. But this year we have been scuppered by the dual circumstances of nearly twice as much money as we would normally have to spend and a global pandemic. So happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you, Joe. Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's a real tragedy, I think, that if we look at 5.2 of the report that we will be spending, or we're paying back £844,000 on top of 121,000 interest, which could have been spent on social housing, which would have provided real social value in our communities and homes for people that really need it at the moment. So I think it's really disappointing in some ways that central government have not extended the deadline for spending this money further, given the challenges that that the council has clearly faced in spending this money. And that isn't just, as Joe said, it's a plethora of challenges that the council have faced, including stamp duty and other factors. But I am concerned about clause 5.3 in this report, which states that investment in staffing and a clear strategy for spending receipts is needed. Well, obviously it's pleasing that until this year we've spent our receipts, all of our receipts, and we know that the right to buy system has its fundamental flaws. But I'm just wondering, could this have been picked up earlier in the year, and to have tried to have provided some short-term investment in the staffing to try and spend this money? And also, I mean, this lack of clear strategy, I'm really concerned about that. I think we need to establish a clear strategy for spending these receipts as soon as possible. And I understand that that Joe mentioned Exeter City habitually do not spend their receipts, but I don't think comparisons are useful. I think we should be trying to set the gold standard. 844,000 is a lot of money that has gone back to government. So I'd like to portfolio holder for Homes and Communities is here through you, Chair. I hope that she will make this a real priority to get a clear strategy going on this. Thanks.
Thank you. Anybody want to come back on that one?
If I could, please, if I could.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Paul. I think that you're quite right. It is a tragedy. It's not a situation that any of us would have wanted. And believe me, everybody's worked their socks off to try and make this as small an amount as possible. Steps were certainly taken earlier in the year to try and address this. Although a member of staff left at just the wrong time, they weren't able to be recruited during the pandemic. Extra resource was floated in from Tim Child's team to support Melissa. And that's actually worked relatively well. We've managed to secure those 19 properties, so that's really good. However, that's a significant reduction on what we would normally expect to complete in a year. So yes, I think people were aware of the fact that this was a huge amount of money for us to spend this year, directly as a result of the changes in government policy 3 years previously, which meant that people could get larger reductions on their homes. So then we had a sudden influx of people wanting to buy their council homes, which then left us with a significant increase in spend for this last year. So, and going forward, we are currently in the recruitment of the replacement of Melissa, who left this week, and also replacing Paul. So we will then be back up to full complement of staff within the housing team, as well as the support that we get from Tim Child's team. So hopefully going forward, that will help. And also Dan Ledger is chairing the housing company TAF. And at the moment, that is veering quite heavily towards how we build a strategy around how we increase not only our affordable, but also our social housing in the future. So hopefully the two will dovetail together and we will have a really strong strategy going forwards.
Okay, thank you, Joe. As you mentioned, Dan, Councillor Ledger.
Thank you, Chair. I think Joe stole my thunder slightly. I was just going to... my first question really is, do we have figures on what the actual pressures will be for the next year, looking at right to buy receipts?
Yeah.
Because that would be really interesting to know what kind of pressure we're going to be under and whether they'll be at the same levels as last year. And then my second question is, obviously we focus solely on acquisitions at the moment to utilise our right to buy receipts. I know that obviously the work the housing TAF are doing, but obviously what's the housing team doing specifically to change its strategy to widen that out without obviously preempting what the housing TAF is going to do? We are looking at other areas to look into acquisitions, and I think that comes from the housing team especially. So what are you doing exactly just to broaden that out from just the acquisitions?
If I may,
Yes, carry on, Joe.
sorry, Tony, I've lost where you are. Oh, you're up there now. Moving around the screen. I think at the moment, Dan, if I'm perfectly honest, we are still looking at, for the foreseeable future, a predominantly acquisition-based programme. We don't currently have the infrastructure or the knowledge internally in order to be able to deliver a building programme. Obviously, you know that, should that be the aspiration of the council, then that could certainly change. But at the moment, I would be lying if I said that we were going to suddenly start building houses next year, because there's a longer lead in than that. And I think an awful lot of what we decide to do as a local authority by yourselves will, I suspect, be led by some of the...
Sorry, Joe, we've lost you.
We've lost your volume, Joe.
Sorry, somebody tried to call me and it came through on my iPad. I think that hopefully we will get some really useful learning and some tips from some of the other local authorities that we're going to be going out to visit as part of the working parties.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Anything else,
Yeah,
Dan?
I may just come back with one more question. Obviously, I know Councillor Miller asked a question about the forward plan earlier. But it does link into this. It was mainly the part of what I was asking to go on the forward plan was the 5-year affordable housing programme that the government's released, with I believe it's about 12 billion that they've released for it. But that looks at 2021 to 2026 on giving grants that could support right to buy receipts that could really start, give us the capital so that we're not constantly lending so much from public PWLBs. That could really facilitate things.
Yes.
I know we've gone past the forward plan, but is that something that the housing team's looking into, and is the HRB going to see something coming forward from that?
Yeah, we certainly are looking at it. So we'll keep you posted.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you both.
Thank you, Chair.
Going through my list here, Megan, you're next.
Oh, thanks, Chair. Yeah, just following on from the last 2 or 3 conversations, really. Joe and I have discussed this, and John, for quite a while now about this right to buy spending, and I've also had a very brief conversation with Councillor Ledger about having a meeting with MPs writing to the government again about this as a portfolio holder, and just putting a bit more pressure on them. So we are thinking it through. It's not really on the back burner as such. We do want to do something about this as soon as we can, but we have to do it in line with everything else, really. So it's just to reassure members that it is being looked into seriously, and I'm intending to set up a meeting with MPs shortly just to see what their view is on it all. Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. John.
Thank you, Chair. Just to pick up on some of those comments, it's worth noting that the agreement that we signed some years ago was very onerous, very one-sided, but we had no choice if we wanted to spend right to buy receipts to sign up to that agreement. I think the wording in the report is perhaps a bit clumsy, in so much as it's not a clear strategy that we need, because we have a strategy, but we need a different strategy to spend more money. And I think that would perhaps be a more accurate reference, because clearly the acquisition of properties is not sufficient to spend all of the right to buy receipts, and our aspiration is to spend the right to buy receipts and more, up to what we can afford. So it's just a different strategy, and that strategy would include our own build and the administration's, the council's desire for social housing as opposed to affordable housing. And I think through the work that we're doing with the TAF, we need to look at our risk appetite as well, because we've been fairly cautious in terms of the investments that we've made, and maybe we need to take some more risks as part of that strategy going forward. So we will be coming forward with a different strategy for this, and that will be included in fact in our housing strategy that we'll be bringing to members fairly shortly, and it will include that greater ambition that I mentioned in relation to the service plan. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, John. For next, I just want to apologise to Debbie. I made you redundant. I'm doing your job for you. I just realised
No,
you're
you
not
carry
supposed to
on.
call speakers.
You carry on, Chair. You're doing a fantastic job. I'll let
Okay.
you continue.
Sorry, Councillor Gazard.
Sorry, Chair. I thought I'd taken my hand down, but I was going to ask a similar question along the lines of Councillor Miller, but that's been answered. So I just wanted to say it's really pleasing to see that we've been able to buy 19 properties. So that is good. So there is good news in it. But I concur with what Councillor Paul Miller had to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Joe.
Thank you, Chair. I hate the thought of handing money back, our money back to central government. It's a bit like as a child handing back pocket money. So any way of avoiding that, I'd love to see. I hope we can persuade the government to change course on this. But what lessons have we learnt from this year, and what steps are we taking for next year so we don't fall foul of the issue next year? Thank you.
Thank you. Who's going to answer that? Anybody? Any comeback on that? No. So all being said.
I can, if you like, Chair. I mean, it's just, I mean, next year we've got considerably less money to spend. We're back to a more normal level to what we would usually be spending. You know, I can't express enough how much more difficult it is to spend a huge sum of money in 12 months. I mean, I think most people think that it would be easy to go out and just buy a load of properties, but actually there are an awful lot of restrictions that we have to abide by in order to be able to spend that. I would agree it is disappointing, but he has done the level best, and actually the process does work. We've managed to spend that money every other year. So I hope that, you know, if we don't have continuing issues with regards to the pandemic and fallout from that, I suspect that next year we will be much more successful again. In subsequent years, as John has said, you know, we hope to have a different strategy in order to move forward in more than a single pronged attack. If we can start to build our own properties or develop with another developer, there are many, many options out there. So hopefully we will, we'll be okay.
Thank you, Joe. Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you. Yeah, it was great that we had 19 properties acquired this year. And it's, to be honest, it's, even though it's very disappointing, it's very understanding. I can understand how this has actually happened. But also we have, in my view, lost two very experienced officers who were named earlier on. And they are they were very well established members of this team, and that certainly doesn't help. And obviously having to have flexible workforce, and as it's already been said through Tim Charles' team coming across, but you can't be experienced in these areas. We have had a hell of a lot of change. And obviously I'd like to say, Joe, I think you've done a really, really good job since you've been in post, taking over from the maternity leave from Amy. But what we need to do, as John has already said, is look at strategies to ensure that this doesn't happen again. Yes, there are different ambitions. I totally endorse what we're looking at. Instead of having affordable homes, that we're having social homes built going forward. But what we need to do is learn from this passage. Yes, it has been incredibly challenging, but what we don't want to be is this time next year having the same discussions. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Ian. Amy.
Hello, yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted, in relation to the discussion about right to buy and the flexibilities that we haven't got around how we spend that, there is perhaps a glimmer of hope in the Housing White Paper, which members may have picked up, which is point 148, which just does acknowledge that the government are still considering the responses to the right to buy consultation that went out some time ago. So members will probably remember that we put a paper forward where we were asked directly by the government about what we wanted from right to buy receipts and how we wanted to spend them, what flexibilities we'd like to have. And we've never had a response to that consultation as yet. It was a national consultation paper, but there is a glimmer of hope, if you like, that they do acknowledge they've not responded to that and they do know they need to come back on it. So, you know, but maybe a glimmer of hope perhaps that we may in the future have more flexibility and the ability to hold on to all of our receipts.
Okay. Is that it, Amy? Yep, thank you, Amy.
Yeah,
Councillor Parr.
Thank you. Yes, following on from that point about right to buy, I mean, I remember way back talking to you, Simon, about, you know, why aren't we building more council houses? And you immediately said, well, you know, then the right to buy kicks in and we spent all this money. And then after whatever the qualifying period is, people buy them. So we haven't got them in our pool. So all the ones that we bought go into our housing stock. So they are then eventually going to be subject to the right to buy again. It just is this mad cycle. Can somebody, I mean, Amy was saying there's a slight glimmer there that the government are reconsidering, but it does seem absolute madness, really, because it's public money, which is then being used, which subsidizes the tenants when they buy their property, and then the tenants probably then sell their property and get a nice amount of money, and we have to pay a huge amount to buy them back.
Yeah, it is mad.
We're all thinking the same, I'm sure.
Yes, you are. Yeah.
Chair, if I may,
yeah, John.
For many years we've lobbied on this policy. Very recently, our portfolio holders lobbied on behalf of this policy because I know how she feels about it. You couldn't dream it up under normal circumstances. And when there's this massive need and huge waiting lists that we're trying to administer, it does seem absolutely crazy. So we'll carry on trying to convince those. But if you read the white paper, as we'll come on to a bit later, this current government does seem really keen on maintaining home ownership opportunities, which of course this is a home ownership opportunity for tenants and a statutory right at the moment.
Thank you, John. Any more blue hands? None I can see. Okay, recommendations? Anybody?
Hello, Chair. So if there's no further recommendations, then it is just to note the contents of this report and the spend information within it.
Okay, thank you, Charles. So we move on to item 11, review of the furniture project. And this is Andrew, I believe. Simon's Andrew's absence.
No, it's me. Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yes, this is a review of the furniture project, which assists new tenants from homeless backgrounds when setting up their new tenancies. So currently there's no official role or funding stream for this bit of work. The work to date has snowballed really from humble beginnings. Our temporary accommodation officer, who's based in the housing options team dealing with homelessness, she started by assisting people with obtaining furniture and white goods when they had no means of provision themselves. These are largely people who've been down the homeless route and in temporary accommodation and being supported by our temporary accommodation officer. So in the main, that's how it started, and it's really snowballed. It really is a bit of a victim of its own success, really. It's now grown to the point where we've obtained several recycled and unwanted items of furniture and white goods. They're stored in a number of our own garages, and they're used when needed, when people are starting a new tenancy and they've got nothing themselves. In the last year, about 40 people have been assisted this way. And we've reached a point, though, where we need to formalise this bit of work, this project, which is now a key part of the allocation process for people in need. And the need, don't have to tell everyone, the need is greater than ever. This project fits in with several other agendas, obviously the poverty agenda, the climate change agenda, because we're looking at recycling furniture and white goods, and also the homeless strategy, which identifies as one of the key points that people need to set up correctly in sustainable accommodation. So it fits in with all of this criteria, but unfortunately it's no longer sustainable in its current format. So really our temporary accommodation officer has been doing this on top of her everyday work, which is supporting people in temporary accommodation to sustain their placements and also to move on into alternative accommodation. And due to the workload and due to the demands and numbers of homeless applicants at the moment and people in temporary accommodation, it's simply not possible to carry on. There's definitely a need for provision of this in this area. So we've listed some options. We've come for a bit of a steer today to Housing Review Board. So we've listed some of the options in the report of how we could take this forward. The first option, and I think the one we prefer, is to keep this service in-house and funded through HRA budgets. This will be a newly designed service, initially only available to council tenants, providing furniture and household items to tenants for free. Benefits include, first of all, certainty that all items are given to households in need, and everyone will be assessed beforehand if in order to qualify. Secondly, we would believe that this service would reinforce a positive impression of the council as an organisation that's here to help people in need, and also a landlord of social housing. And we're confident we could do that internally because we've got the different teams can work together. The logistics are there to move furniture at the right time, recycling items left in void properties, of which there are several, and we could also hopefully bring in sewers as well for assistance with bulky furniture. So that's the benefits. Challenges of this particular option include, first of all, funding for staffing required. We believe one person, but maybe more, would be required. And we've costed one person, we've estimated that the need would be 2 days a week, and that would be approximately £12,000 a year to provide one person 2 days a week. Other challenges include delivery of items, particularly the heavier ones, because obviously at the moment we need to, one person can't do it all themselves. We hired a van, hire assistants a lot of the time for people to move the property around, the goods around. And other challenges include, we don't want to be seen as competition for all the charities that are doing this at the moment, but I think we're confident we can get past that. We work really closely with all the other organisations such as Turntable and Hospice Care. We work really closely with them. Their demand is high as well, so we wouldn't be taking work away from them. We would be working alongside them. We'd continue to work alongside them. So that's the first option. Second option is ending the service and utilise existing alternatives. So that means, so we've reached a point where it's unsustainable as it is. Under this option, tenants could be signposted to Turntable, Hospice Care, and other companies that sell cheap furniture and other items. Also, you could use eBay or local websites. Benefits would be no cost to the council when we've got a time of restricted budgets. We'd also support existing local companies and charities, but we can do that working alongside them. And it would also encourage self-reliance from some of our tenants. Challenges, we believe this way the poorest people may well lose out. This project has been born out of a need and a realisation that existing services cannot cope with the levels of demand. So that's where we are with the second option. The third option, this is to end the service as it is and replace it with a voucher scheme. Benefits here, we could still support the most vulnerable, giving them a good start in their tenancy. Potentially lower costs and continue with the service, no storage costs, no staffing costs. But challenges here, we would have to decide what the vouchers would cover. We'd have to negotiate with outside companies what they would accept, and we'd need to develop a whole set of usage for value for vouchers and still administer the usage. That's the third option. The fourth option is to limit the service to furniture items acquired through void clearance of council properties. So this would involve collecting and storing remaining furniture, household items or suitable floor coverings or carpets left in properties when they become void. Benefits of this option, we can enable the service to continue in some form. We would maybe be able to link in with Ian Williams' commitment to social value, and we are currently required to store left items anyway. So that is that. But I'm confident. But another angle is we could merge this with a new post, so we could combine these together. Challenges for this role, for this option, are very much the same as they were for bringing it in-house. So perhaps that could be a combination of the first. The first option is the one we really support, which is bringing a new member of staff in 2 days a week to do this work. But they would also they would reach out, they'd work with existing charities and Ian Williams and look at voids from our own stock. So thank you. So any questions, anybody?
I've got Councillor Miller first.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I do have a question on whether we have any actual data on any statistics or of how these interventions, which I would describe them as of providing furniture to people who are our most vulnerable and poorest in the community, leads to tenants living happier, healthier, more stable lives in the longer term. I assume it does, but I just wonder whether we had any kind of numerical data on that. I mean, from first reading, I think this is I think this service has to continue. I think it has an amazing social value. It links in very closely with our anti-poverty aspirations. And I think it provides a service that people couldn't find elsewhere. So I think I like to think that it would avoid costs from people being unable to maintain their tenancies, of them having to present back as homeless and us having to relieve their homelessness through the duty we have through the Homelessness Reduction Act. So yeah, I'd like to hear your thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Miller. Anyone going to answer that one?
Yeah, I can, Chair. Yeah, so there are no statistics as such, but it's just we know when people have gone down a homeless route and we're providing accommodation for them, we know what they've got. They've got nothing sometimes, they're rough sleepers. So we don't want them to go into a property where they've got nothing, or they'd have to, we don't want our 6 weekly check from estate management to find people who are just living with very, very bare facilities, just on a mattress or whatever, with very, very little to have. And also, we know the people, anyone really, when they're moving into a new property, whatever their circumstances, there's a lot of cost initially. They've got to pay rent, they've got to bring in a lot of other services. So no statistics as such, apart from the fact that 40 households have required this assistance over the last year. I think that speaks for itself.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I've lost my list page. We have Peter next. Peter, yep.
Thank you, Chair. I better declare an interest like I did last time, because I'm Vice Chair of Sidmouth Consolidated Charities, whose money is used on a lot of tenants within East Devon, within the Sidmouth area. I'm glad to see this report. I think you state your option one is the best option. But just to give a brief outline to people, there's us, there's the Lions, there's Rotary, there's lots of little local charities who actually get applications from members of East Devon housing staff to actually help some of the tenants, whether it be white goods, whether it be items like beds, wardrobes, settees, etc. And this is just, I've got to say, over the last 2 years, it's just increasing and increasing all the time. You know, as most people know, charities are really struggling now to get money in to be able to pay out. And that's a challenge for us as charities. But to have this put on top of what we would normally do is creating extra challenges. We've never really turned anybody down in the past. It's very rare that we ever would, but it is there. And also, I know the real emphasis on this at the moment has been the existing homeless. There are a lot of people out there who are council tenants. They may have been a tenant for 10, 15 years. They sometimes really struggle to buy items like white goods. So I'm thinking that if this service takes off in the way that I think a lot of people want it to take off, is we don't restrict it just to homeless people. If you've got a family with 3 children, etc., and your washing machine breaks down, and we know how much a washing machine costs these days, we in the past would have stood up to that and said, yes, we'll get you a new washing machine. But there's a lot of those people who are like on borderline. I know Andrew said they'd be means tested in some way. I don't know where he's going with that. Perhaps he can explain that to us. But there's some of those people who are in real hardship, and sometimes they're both working as well. I mean, it's really bad sometimes in certain areas. So I'll send that back to Andrew on talking about the how he sees the mean testing going on.
Very good, Peter. And Andrew?
Yeah, thank you. So we know at the moment this service is mainly used by people in our temporary accommodation units, and we know full well what they have. We don't really have to test them. We know that they've got nothing a lot of the time. They've come from a rough sleeping background or fleeing domestic violence or relationship breakdowns. We know from our assessments through the homeless route. So really, there's nothing on top of that. There's nothing. We know when anyone comes down the homeless route, as part of the inquiries, we look at their circumstances and their means. We do that anyway, and that would continue to be done. I think really what we're looking for today is a bit of a steer about which direction we want to go. If we do focus on the staff member starting this, they can combine in with so many all the other things people have mentioned about, all the other charities and organisations out there that help people, and looking at extending it beyond people who've just gone down a homeless route. So there are all those possibilities to do. Today is what really is to get it. It's happening. It's already happening. But the fact is, as we said, it's unsustainable. We want to progress. We want to keep doing it. We want to progress it. So that's where we are. Today is a steer. We can look at the finer details as we go along. With suggestions from people. We'll listen to whatever suggestions people have. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Andrew. Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Andrew and the team. Again, we've been in the middle of a serious pandemic. I think you've all done remarkably well under the circumstances. When I actually look at this, what reminds me is about the Handyman initiative, quite a few years back, and we did enable the framework to have a little bit of a soft start, and we saw where it went, and we know how successful it was. But one thing we've always got to be mindful of is the safeguarding aspect. Now, all the officers on the front line are all DBS checked. Therefore, we have that assurance that dealing with the most vulnerable in the times of hardship, have bricks and mortar, but they do need these areas of support, white goods, to get them up and running. And who knows, this could actually springboard them into work in other things as well. Now, when I've listened to Andrew's proposal and we're looking at the option 1, for you, Chair, when the appropriate time is, I would like it to be considered that we go with option 1, and then we have a report coming back to us in 6 months, but also keeping in mind with what Peter Sullivan came in with his suggestion, being open to tenants who are on the breadline, who are working, who are trying every single day, that this could be actually encompassed as it grows after a soft start. But I don't think at the moment Andrew or his team would ever turn anyone away who needed help, be it if they are homeless, be that if they've never got any goods. So I'd like to put that as a recommendation if you see fit, Chair, and I would be looking obviously for a seconder on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Ian. Councillor Parr.
Thank you. I was going to say I will second, but I was also hoping to speak. I mean, looking at 5.
Sorry, Councillor Parr, can I interrupt you there? We've got an amendment or a recommendation there. Can we just get that one seconded? If that
I did just say I was going to second.
I thought you'd withdrawn. Sorry.
No.
No. Okay. Fine.
So we have a seconder to.
I said I will second it, but also I wish to speak. Thank you.
Apologies, Councillor.
That's fine. No, looking at 5.3, I mean, yes, it's, 5.4. It's in line completely with everything that people want to do, which is reuse, recycle. That's absolutely brilliant. And the second thing I wanted to say was, I think it's very important to make sure we're liaising with other charities and bodies that are doing this sort of work. And I'm thinking, for instance, of the Beer Men's Shed, where people with huge skills do, and I know there's one in Exmouth as well, recycle things, and people who know how to mend electrical stuff and who can do repairs. I think it's all of that is very good indeed. So I certainly support option 1, and will second Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Councillor Parr. Anybody else wish to speak? Can't see no red hands, blue hands rather. Okay, so we'll go to the recommendations. Yes.
Chair, perhaps I should have highlighted it in the actual legal comments. My one concern is obviously as a landlord, if we're providing furniture for our tenants, albeit second-hand, what checks do we currently do to ensure that they are within the regulations of the current fire safety regs? Because obviously, if they're 10 years old, they would have complied 10 years ago, but do they comply with the current regulations? And as a landlord, should we be condoning putting that sort of furniture into our properties? Those my one concern. So I'd like, and I mean, that would be a sensible thing for the officers to do some research on and comment on that. But going forward with the recommendation, which will be then, if I could just find it, that the board consider the options as set out in sections 6.2 to 6.7, not section 7 of this report, and they give a steer as to option 1, which should be explored with consideration to the financial implications of that option. I think because you've recommended option 1 to go into that recommendation.
Correct.
And the extra bit from Councillor Hall?
Yes. Councillor Hall's amendment.
Sorry, I didn't get the word. I didn't actually pick the wording up.
I understand that was for a report back with a review in 6 months' time.
Yep, 6 months.
And then we could, sorry, Chair, if you don't mind, and then we could hopefully build in with what Peter Sullivan was saying about really building in with the existing tenants. So as I said on the outset, really a soft start like we had with the handyman.
Thank you, Ian.
So if we just put with the option to be reviewed after 6 months.
Correct.
I'm happy with that, Chair.
Yeah.
Okay.
Before we go to the vote, Megan, you got your hand up. Do you want to add anything before we?
Oh yeah, it's only a quick one, just to say I'm really pleased if people are going to be going for this option one, because I totally agree with it, and been wanting this for a long time. And I'm assuming that the funding that's going to be required for staffing and storage and van and all that presumably would come from the housing revenue account, would it?
Correct, as I understand it.
Yeah.
Yes, Chair. So Simon referred earlier to that surplus, nearly £1 million, and things coming forward in year. This has come forward rather earlier than anticipated. But of course, this, if you go for option one and the staffing implications, that can be funded from that surplus.
Yeah, good. Okay.
Right. Thank you,
That's
John.
all. Thank you very
Megan.
much. Yeah,
Nothing
that's
else to
fine.
add, Charles, before we put it to the vote?
Well, it's just, I mean, I suppose that review that review in six months' time can actually just reassure you of the legal position with second-hand furniture being provided to tenants.
Off requirements, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Perhaps the Democratic Service Officer can just make a note of that, so that it actually is included in the forward plan.
Sorry, Chair, can I just ask a quick question before we go to vote? Because my mind's starting to go overdrive now. I'm sure that we're already pat testing any electrical goods already before they go in.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not pat testing. It's the actual the foam, the foams, etc.
It's
in
the
furniture.
Yeah.
But all electrical stuff should be pack tested as well before it actually goes in.
Yeah.
I can provide assurance. Yeah, our temporary accommodation officer at the moment is trained to pat test any items, and she does, and all the furniture is checked, and that would be part of the obviously that would be part of the requirements for anyone else taking over that role.
Yeah.
Okay, Debbie.
Let's do a vote, shall we, Chair?
Yes, please.
Okay, members of the board, if you could please indicate if you are for or against, or if you're abstaining when I call out your name. Thank you. We'll start with you, Chair. Councillor McCullum.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Chamberlain.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Hall.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Parr.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
For.
Thank you. Cindy Collier, please.
For.
Thank you. Peter Sullivan.
For.
Thank you, Peter. And Kat Summers, please.
For.
Thank you, Kat. Chair, that is carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on to item number 12, Integrated Asset Management Contract Update and Analysis of Housing Complaints. And I believe Joe's doing this one. Joe, are you doing this one?
No, sorry, it's Graham. It's Graham, Chair.
All right, sorry. I got done as Joe. Yes, Graham.
Thank you, Chair. If I can start with the background, as I'm sure you're all aware, our integrated asset management contract with Ian Williams went live in July 2019. And it's fair to say there have been many challenges along the way as all parties got used to the way the contract operated. It was indeed a very different model to what we had previously been used to. Our specialist consultants Echelon, who led the procurement of the contract, have recently carried out a detailed review of the first year of the contract. Their findings have been scrutinised in detail by all parties, and as you can imagine, the report highlighted areas for improvement in the delivery of the contract, which have been acknowledged, and we're already putting steps in place to implement necessary changes. The overriding consensus of the report is that the contract is running well and as expected, and compared to other ones that Echelon have been involved with, it's performed better, so that's pleasing for us. Contractors resource, Ian Williams are now fully staffed. The management team is fairly stable, but as with all contractors, there is a fluctuation in turnover at operative level. This is closely monitored and reviewed at our monthly operation team meetings. COVID has impacted with the majority of the management team working from home, and also co-location of staff in the East Devon Council offices has had to be put on hold for the time being. But generally, we've managed to maintain staffing levels pretty well. Our own property and asset team has a number of vacancies at the moment, which is putting a strain on the management of the contract, but we are about to go into a recruitment process, which will hopefully fill those gaps. Current position, as you can imagine, the past year has thrown up many challenges with the delivery of the contract. The first lockdown in March of last year put severe restrictions on the ability to deliver the contract. Many of the contracted staff were furloughed, jobs had to be put on hold, etc. Once those restrictions were lifted, a detailed remobilisation plan was implemented, which included contracted staff returning from furlough and the backlog of jobs cleared. The plan was successfully managed and implemented, and the contract returned to a business as usual position in September of last year, subject to all the health and safety working restrictions that continue to be followed. This latest lockdown has been imposed, but we continue to deliver reactive repairs and voids, cyclical servicing and compliance work streams, all as business as usual. To date, pleasingly, we haven't experienced any access issues at all, and repairs and voids are being delivered as business as usual, as I've already said. In addition to managing delivering the day-to-day requirements of the contract, all parties have continued to look to see where improvements can be made, and subject to COVID restrictions, are looking to progress such things as the property MOTs, social value elements of the contract. So we're all quite excited of moving forward with those. Cyclical servicing and compliance is particularly important to us. It's progressing well with all the work streams being delivered. So we're generally compliant in all areas, and we're also being able to deliver areas of cyclical servicing that previously hadn't been delivered. So we've made a lot of progress in those areas. Complaints, no one likes complaints, but we have to accept they do happen, and particularly in reactive repairs and voids. We have developed a complaint management system led by our business and customer improvement managers. This ensures that they are managed efficiently, and importantly, that they are reviewed at our monthly operation meetings, and we all need to learn from the lessons of the complaints and hopefully take steps to ensure they don't reoccur. Customer satisfaction. It is acknowledged that the collection and review of customer satisfaction somewhat fell off the radar during the past year with COVID. We've carried out a detailed review of this area of the business. The questions that we ask have been revised and agreed by the repair service group chaired by Peter Sullivan. Paper copies are now being left with tenants after repairs are carried out. The tenant is also requested, if they're willing to answer a question on the contractor's PDA. In addition, our repairs advisors are calling approximately 10% of those tenants that have had a repair carried out on a monthly basis. So it gives us more information. All data is collated into a score and is managed against the KPIs. Our KPI is based on a single question asked by both us and the contractor to ensure the data for KPI analysis is consistent. And it's basically, are you happy with the service that's being delivered? We don't just look at that question, we also look at the answers to the other questions. So we're trying to look in and drive up the performance for everybody. Generally, there is some costing data contained in the report. And it's generally performing as expected. There are some infographics which contain some useful information, and they also show average of repairs carried out on properties, the average repairs, which is about 2.25 repairs per property. Interestingly, 28% of our properties have had no repairs carried out whatsoever, whereas 15 properties have had over 15 repairs carried out. Voids, you'll also look at our exclusion costs in the report, and we are having to spend considerable costs in removing rubbish that has been left in properties, cleaning the properties, garden clearance, etc. from outgoing tenants before we can start work on void. So that is adding significant cost to our overall void cost. In conclusion, we're continuing to build on the working relationship with Ian Williams to further improve the delivery of the contract, and generally, I think the consensus is that the report, the contract is operating well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Graham. We've got Councillor Ledger.
Thanks very much, Chair. Thanks for the report, Graham. Really appreciate it. Got 4, I hope, quite easy questions for you. So with Ian Williams, other than the Voids contract manager, I know that's their current structure, but are all those positions currently filled? That's question 1. Question 2, I know you said that you're going through a current recruitment drive. When do you think, if all goes well, that all those positions will be filled? The third question is to do with complaints. Obviously, we've had a report from Joe on the number of complaints. How many of them were concluded after stage 1, and how many have been escalated to stage 2? And then my last question is on price per property exclusions. On the overall budget, how much is going through on exclusions and how much is going through price per property for the whole contract?
Thank you, Councillor Ledger. Graham, or do you want to answer that one?
With resourcing, you mean in Ian Williams or at our level? Ian Williams are fully staffed, and our side we're 2 maintenance surveyors light at the moment on the reactive and voids service side. But I think in addition, Ian Williams are also recruiting for a void supervisor, which will sit between the voids foreman and the voids manager, so that they're introducing an extra stage of management or supervision. So does that answer your question?
Yeah, that answers the first one. The second one was on East Devon on the recruitment.
The recruitment side, we're hoping to start the recruitment next week, but we know it's going to be challenging. Our neighbouring authority, Exeter City Council, are also going through a recruitment process, and unfortunately for us, their salaries are considerably higher for the same posts. So we're also looking at potentially doing a job evaluation for some of our posts, because our salary structure is such that it's very, very difficult and challenging to get the right people in place to be able to deliver the service, the best possible service. We tend not to be offered the best people, or the best people don't apply, and unfortunately, I dare have to say it comes down to the salaries we offer. The third question, sorry.
Third question was complaints. How many of them were remedied after the stage 1, and how many got escalated to stage 2?
As far as I know, all of them have been remedied after stage 1, and we also get a number of complaints that we address and resolve on a daily basis to ensure they don't even get to the stage 1 process. So we're actively monitoring that, and we're continuing to try and improve on that service. So
fantastic to hear. And then the last one was on the split on budget. I don't know if you'd be best placed to answer that, whether how much is going through inclusions on our overall budget for the year, and how much goes through price per property.
I can't give you the overall figures, unfortunately, because Rob will carry those, but I can give you a little bit of a flavour if that helps. So our void cost per month can vary significantly depending what the condition of voids are that are handed back to us. So, for example, in September, our average void cost was 5,400. In November, our average void cost was 3,400. So you can see from that the price per void cost is about 2,400. So our exclusions, we do have exclusions above that, but it varies month to month and is very much dependent on the condition of the voids that are handed back to us. So I think for December, our average void cost was down at 2,800. So, you know, you can see a fluctuation month on month. We could do January and it could go back up to nearer 5,000 again. It does very much depend on the condition of the properties when they're handed back to us.
Thank you, Graham. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. As we're still non-members, Councillor Gizzard.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Graham, for the report. It's a question on customer satisfaction feedback, please. Obviously, a lot of the, or some of the work gets subcontracted out to other agencies or other companies. And I'm thinking in particular with roof replacement. How do you get customer feedback when that happens? Because I understand you've done quite a few lot of roof repairs or new roofs put on. When the company that undertakes those completely new roof coverings don't leave any forms. So how do you get feedback from the customers, please?
Right.
It's an issue we're having with Ian Williams, because although subcontractors are being tasked to carry out that work, it's incumbent on Ian Williams to leave the documentation. So that's an area we're addressing with them to make sure their contracts managers visiting. As you know, last year customer satisfaction wasn't good for us, and we've acknowledged that. But moving forward, we're targeting to call 10% of our, or we are currently, and we're still targeting to contact 10% of the repairs carried out per month. But those are going to be targeted so that we concentrate on the bigger jobs that are likely to be subcontracted. So we're going to try and do it from our own office telephone calls in cases, you know, the situations that you're mentioning. Residents aren't left with a customer satisfaction survey to fill in. So it's a difficult one, but it's an area we're looking to build on and improve. But I think in answer to your question, we would try and do it from telephone calls within the office by identifying the repairs on our system.
Thank you, Graham. Thank you, Councillor Gizzard. Councillor Chamberlain.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Graham, for your report. My questions are around compliance and health and safety. I note that in your report that you say generally that we're compliant in all areas. Generally. My question is, can you be a bit more specific as to how compliant we are with gas annual servicing checks, electrical safety checks, asbestos checks within properties, in the properties that we have, please?
Yes, of course. Gas, we're running at 100% compliance, although we may have one go out of compliance today because of a COVID access issue. So gas, we generally run at 100% compliance. Electrical testing safety, just over 4 years ago, we introduced the 5-year electrical testing program to all our properties. Previously, there was no electrical testing program in place. We're coming to the end of year 4 on that now, and it's all going very well apart from access issues in certain properties. So we've got a number of properties, which are probably about 30 each year, where tenants refuse to give us access to carry out these checks. So we continually make phone calls, we write letters, we ask for assistance from our estate management team, but even if we make appointments, the guys can turn up to do the electrical checks and they still may not gain access. So that's a challenge that we're having to address. Solid fuel, we are fully compliant and the servicing regime is continually ongoing. Legionella, we are fully compliant. Asbestos, we've got management surveys in place for roughly 4,000 of our 4,200 or so properties. I think you need to be assured as well that we don't let any work be carried out in a property unless, at the very least, an asbestos management survey is in place. And if it's a major piece of work, we have to get a more detailed survey called a refurbishment and demolition survey. So we're actively on that. What other areas of compliance did you say?
No, I think I mean, fire safety, yes, is another one with the fire safety checks with your smoke alarms and things like that. And re-inspections would be on any communal hallways and things with emergency lighting and that.
Yeah, the electrical re-inspections are carried out on an annual basis in all our communal areas. All our fire alarms, emergency lighting, dry riser testing is carried out on an annual basis or monthly basis as required. Lifts are serviced, I think, 4 times a year, and all that's fully up to date. What else is there? Oh, asbestos. All our communal areas of all our blocks of flats are surveyed on an annual basis to make sure this either the asbestos is managed properly, there's no deterioration. What else can I tell you?
No, I think you've covered most of the things that I raised there. I would just add into that from an asbestos point of view that if any works are to be carried out in any of the properties, before those works are done, you should ensure that you have a refurbishment survey before any of the area is touched. A management survey is something that's held to ensure compliance of the property, and you know where the asbestos is. If there are any works to be carried out in that property, as a minimum, you need a refurbishment survey for that area to be compliant.
Yeah, definitely. And also, just to give you a bit of comfort, one of the requirements of the Ian Williams contract is that the operatives are task trained to work with low-level asbestos. If there's anything higher level, the more serious the chrysidolite asbestos, the blue asbestos, it becomes licensed, and then we're on to the 14-day notice period. So yeah, our compliance.
Yeah, as long as those people are task trained in the correct product to work with, because task training obviously covers some 50 plus products.
Yeah.
So as long as they are task trained in that specific area, then that is absolutely fine. But I'm sure you have all those details, so that's brilliant.
We've got all the certification of the staff and what they're trained in, what they're not trained in. We've got all the construction phase health and safety plans. We've got all the RAMs for the contractors in place and what they can and can't do. And if as you say, the specific areas of work, we ensure the RAMs are in place before we allow the work to start.
Lovely, and that's all followed up with the relevant documentation for license works and things. I'm assuming, do you update your own registers?
Yes. Yeah.
Excellent. Lovely, thank you ever so much, Graham.
Also, just to give you a peace of mind as well, we are looking to move forward with a detailed compliance audit of all our areas. So that will be carried out by an independent consultant.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. John.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to comment on that last exchange, really. It's really helpful that we're challenged on this aspect of our work, and Councillor Chamberlain clearly knows about this area of work, and that kind of reassurance for you as a board and for me and Joe and others as managers is really helpful. Perhaps this is something that you would want to see on the forward plan. We talked about a forward plan earlier. And Graham, I know that Graham and his team take this incredibly seriously. They help me sleep at night because they're quite onerous duties in this regard. And we'll look at some aspects of compliance when we come to look at the COVID dashboard a bit later. But I think it's important that we bring reports to the board in future on those aspects of compliance that were just part of that discussion. And then I'd welcome Councillor Chamberlain and other members of the board to keep us true and honest on these issues, because it's so important that tenant safety is the top of our list of priorities. We'll put it that way. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, John. I see Councillor Chinner wants to come back.
Yes, no worries. Thank you very much, John. And I would definitely be interested in helping you going forward. If you like, for information for you, I am a compliance surveyor and I work in health and safety. It's my full-time job. I'm also a fully qualified asbestos surveyor 402, 405. So it is an area that I know pretty well, been doing for quite a long time. So if you would like help with that going forward, please feel free to contact me.
Thank you, Councillor Chairman. Okay, there's no more blue hands up, and I believe this one is for information only. No need for any further action.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, before I move on to the next item on the agenda, I was conscious of the fact it's now 4:15 and we've still got a few reports to go through. So can I ask everyone to, one, keep your questions short, answer short, and no repeating, just to try and get through, preferably before 6 o'clock tonight.
Can we have a comfort break, please?
You want a comfort break? Yes, we can have.
We do.
5 minutes, 10 minutes?
5 would be fine for me.
5 minutes? Everyone agree? 5 minutes. We'll come back in 5 minutes' time.
Okay, Chair, you ready to reconvene? Don't forget your mute button, Chair.
Yes, I am here. Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, it looks as though we're all back when you're ready to proceed.
Okay, moving on. Agenda number 13, social housing white paper, and I believe Amy is doing this one.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So for the benefit of members, this is the report set out on page 70 to 76. And it's finally here, the very much anticipated housing white paper, which is also becoming commonly known as the new charter for social housing residents. So after a shuffle of housing ministers and against the backdrop of nationwide complications, including Brexit and obviously more recently the pandemic, we finally saw the release of this paper back in November 2020. So a grand total of over 3 years in the making. This is an absolute, I can't sort of emphasise enough really the need for members to read this 76-page document. If you haven't had the chance to do so yet, we've included the link at the beginning of the report. What you can see in front of you, we've obviously done our best to summarise the paper, but you'll see in there that it does make regular references to the role of boards in relation to the governance of social housing. So I would really strongly recommend you take the time to read it. So as members will probably be aware, the paper is as a result of the in-depth review of social housing that the government promised in the aftermath of the Grenfell tragedy back in 2017. This review was informed by a series of consultations with the sector, which took part across the country. By memory, we sent along 2 of our residents to, I think the event for us was held in Bridgewater. And as a result of these consultations, there were some major failings identified in relation to 5 key areas of social housing. And they were ensuring homes are safe and decent, effective resolution of complaints, empowering residents and strengthening the power of the regulator, tackling stigma and celebrating thriving communities, and expanding supply and supporting home ownership. These themes went on to inform a green paper, which we presented to you back in 2018. The title of that was A New Deal for Social Housing. And so, as you can see here, what's been followed up now is this white paper. And the paper sets out some wide-ranging and compulsive changes to how social housing landlords are going to need to operate in the future. And the themes that I've just mentioned to you have been redrafted and expanded into 7 specific themes with a number of new measures and a very much enhanced role for the regulator. So pretty fair to say this is going to impact majorly on what we do. The paper proposes changes to some of our operational activities, which are undermined by a series of new tenant satisfaction indicators, which you can see summarised at the top of page 73. I'll note that those are in draft format at the moment. So these indicators are going to be absolutely key, and they're going to form the basis of understanding how social landlords are performing. We will be required to submit these figures on a very regular basis to the regulator, which they will then publish. And what that means is that tenants will be able to compare our performance as a landlord to others. So there's a number of headlines from the paper. I'm just going to very briefly touch upon a few, which I think are worth mentioning today. So one of the big things in here is the return of an inspection regime. This is intended to ensure the regulator is able to take a much more proactive approach to regulation. And for us, as a landlord to over 1,000 properties, this is going to mean an inspection of at least every 4 years. Or I should add sooner, if the regulator has reason to suspect a breach of a standard, in which case they will only be required to give us just 2 days' notice. The paper really strengthens the relationship between the regulator and the Ombudsman. I note that that was discussed or touched upon earlier. So there's consistencies and regular reference in here to the Ombudsman's new complaint handling code, which we know was released in July last year. And in general, there's a real emphasis in here around the handling of complaints. And they've done that through bringing forward the creation of new complaint handling orders, which could be issued to a landlord in the scenario of being found at fault. And it's important to also point out that there's also now unlimited fines that landlords could be subject to. So previously, I believe that was capped at £5,000. That's now unlimited. Unsurprisingly, and as we've just been comforted very much by Graham in the previous item, there's a huge emphasis on here on building safety matters with reference to all areas of building compliance. And there's a real focus on the importance of openness and transparency when it comes to matters of safety. And the document highlights the importance of tenants being able to access this sort of information as and when they require it. The paper also outlines the need for landlords to identify key responsible persons within organisations that will hold overall accountability. So there is a requirement for us to have one person that will have responsibility and ownership of all matters to do with health and safety. So that's everything to do with the buildings, again, very much linked to what we were just talking about. And secondly, someone who's responsible for compliance of the consumer standards. Refreshingly, the paper makes regular reference to the climate change agenda, which we were hoping would be in there very much. So there's an acknowledgement that this is an absolute key challenge for us as we move forward. It also commits, really pleasingly, to a review of the Decent Home Standard, because that's not been looked at for a number of years. And what they set out to do with that is to incorporate expectations that relate to decarbonising our properties and the energy efficiency measures that we're going to need to put in place. The document repeatedly makes reference to the need for landlords to ensure tenant involvement is a top priority. It refers to the role of scrutiny and the function of scrutiny, and the need for us to publish resident engagement strategies. And some of that links back again to all of the issues around health and safety and how we can ensure residents have access to that information. There's many links in here with the health and wellbeing agenda, which again supports our council plan. So pleasing to see reference being made to some of the challenges around mental health, as well as reference to the sector's response to COVID, where it suggests that good landlords have been seen to prioritise health and wellbeing priorities by providing support to tenants in a number of innovative ways through the pandemic, which I consider us to be one of those landlords. So I've summarised there just a few of the headlines. The report that you've got in front of you summarises all 7 sections in detail. That's from point 2 through to point 8. Disappointing to not see any new policy proposals in there around one of our biggest challenges in the sector, which is supply. Again, we've touched upon that today. And the document, I think it's fair to say the document through the sector has picked up a bit of criticism for that. I should add, and again, we've mentioned this, that priority number 7, you will see, is based around routes into home ownership. Again, just cementing that this is still going to be a key priority for this government, with no hint of a let-up of right to buy, which, as we know, is slowly depleting our stock. But as I said, there is a glimmer of hope in that they've acknowledged they've not responded to the consultation about spend on right to buy receipts. So just to finish then, Chair, we need to take note of this paper. Its advanced release prior to being legislated gives us time to prepare accordingly, and you'll see how we propose to do that set out in the recommendations before you. John touched upon the service plan earlier. You'll see that we've also included compliance with this paper as part of one of our key challenges in the coming year. My view is that the housing leadership team need to start a self-assessment exercise as soon as possible, and we should continue to report to you, board, the progress we're making on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Amy. Anybody got any questions? Don't see any blue hands.
No blue hands, Chair. Nope.
No. Okay. So is this just for
the board note the contents and recommendations of the Social Housing White Paper and recommend that the Housing Service start to make preparations for the forthcoming legislation and ensure that our policies and procedures are up to date in respect of tenant safety and tenant involvement. Then there are further reviews. We improve our complaint handling process to improve tenant satisfaction. We review the resources and capacity to deliver the new requirements. We revisit our systems thinking purposes to ensure that we focus on what matters to tenants and reduce failure demand. And we work with tenant representatives to embrace the sentiments and contents of the white paper.
Thank you, Charles. So
Chair, would you like to propose that from the chair?
I will propose that from the chair quite happily.
You won't need a seconder then, although we do have a hand up from Councillor Sarah Chamberlain.
Oh yes, we have. Sorry, Councillor Chamberlain.
Yeah, I will second that. If you're proposing it, I will second it. I think it's a very important document coming forward to go forward with, especially with the tragedies of Grenfell. One question that I just have from that, I'm reading through that paperwork that I don't know if anyone could answer for me, is currently what do our tenants freely have access to when it comes to documentation to do with their properties? So, i.e., can they access the asbestos register should they want to hang a picture up and things like that? Do they have access to the last gas servicing documents like that? Is there a system in place at the moment, or is that something that's looking to be put in place in the future?
Okay, Amy, or
Yeah, Chair.
Yeah.
So I think there's different, depending on the area of compliance, there's some different things in place. I know that for gas safety that we do have to issue obviously a copy of the certificate, and we leave that with the resident. At the moment, without our tenant portal being live, and I know we're working on that in the background at the moment, there is limitations to the information that is readily available out there, but obviously we can, on request, give some of that information out. I know that on void properties, so there is a sort of pack given to residents in relation to their property when they come into a property at the very beginning of their tenancy. But I think it's fair to say that we've been looking with our tenant portal about how we can make that much more accessible for residents, and it's a key theme in this paper, which I sort of just touched upon, about the fact that we need to make that really accessible for people so that they can get information to us. So I think it's fair to say that we do need to review that area, and we need to go through each area carefully to make sure we can do that in the best possible way. I will just ask Graham to comment on that, because he's again just a little bit more operational in relation to that, in case there's anything I've missed there.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you, Amy. Nothing back from Graham now.
I think with that going forward, I think the major thing out of that is actually reducing the risk for our tenants and ourselves. Incurring major fines from things that could have been reduced in the future. So, as I said at the very beginning, I'm quite happy to second this going forward, this proposal. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gizzard.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to let Amy know, and members of the board, talking about gas certificates. I had my gas certificate turned up this morning. So, yeah, we do get certificates.
I did pass, hopefully. Okay, Peter.
I was just going to say, Chairman, shouldn't we be taking the vote? We've already discussed this.
Yep. Councillor Parr, is there anything specific you want to mention before we put it to the vote? No? No. Okay, Debbie, do you want to put it to the vote?
Thank you, Chair. Okay, members of the board, when I call out your name, if you could just say whether you are for or against or abstaining from the proposal, which is set out on page 70 under the title of recommendations. So we'll start with you, Chair. Councillor McCullum.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Chamberlain.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Hall.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Parr.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor.
For.
Thank you. Cindy Collier.
For.
Thank you. Peter Sullivan.
For.
Thank you, Peter. And finally, Kat Summers, please. For. I could read your lips. Thank you, Kat. Chair, that's carried unanimously. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Chairman, sorry to interrupt, but I couldn't.
Oh, Helen, sorry.
Sorry to interrupt. I couldn't unmute when you asked me to speak, but all I wanted to say was I tried to click on the links to the background information and I could get the council plan link, but the other two just wouldn't do anything.
Amy, anybody? John, Amy?
Yeah, Chair, I can see that there's an error with the detail of the link. So if members are happy, I'll see if I can resolve that and just email that round to the board after the
Sorry,
meeting.
I just wanted to look at the what you need to know about the social housing white paper. I thought
Absolutely,
that
of
would
course,
be
yeah.
useful. Thank you.
Okay.
Apologies for that, but I'll get that round to the board later today, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to agenda item 14, your home, your wellbeing research report, and I've got it down as Natalie. Is that
Thank
correct?
you, Chair. Yes, no, that's correct. Thank you. Well, firstly, I just want to say that it's thanks to you, the board, that I'm able to bring this final report to you all. This has been a 3-year study, so it's very exciting to come and present to you the results. It was, I don't know if many of you remember, but it was probably about 5 years ago when I came to the board asking if you'd be willing to kind of do this research and enabling me to form a partnership with the University of Birmingham and Live West and start looking into the relationship between a home and well-being and our role as a landlord. It was at the time pretty exciting and innovative, something that we've never done at East Devon before. So from a personal point of view, I have thoroughly enjoyed doing this research and working with our partners. So I don't want to go through all the results because, as you might imagine, 3 years of worth of data is a lot, and that would take us till tomorrow, and I don't think you want to be sitting here till tomorrow. I hope the report is comprehensive enough to kind of show you what we have done and what we've achieved and what we've found, but I've also added 3 years worth of infographics. So if you want to see the results presented in a more visual way, I hope that that's given you some idea of what we found. I guess before I take any questions, what I would like to say, and it's something that I know all the research team, I think it's just really struck a chord with us all, is it really has shown the importance of our role as a social landlord and how a good home really does matter. And the homes that we provide are truly more than just bricks and mortar. And I know we all know this, and it's something that we hear all the time, but to have research and evidence to back this up, I think is, really crucial. If I just take the point about the importance of us as a social landlord, I guess how I want to expand on that is that we really do provide more than shelter. We support our tenants in many other ways. So for instance, we don't just collect rent. Our rental officers are there on the other end of a phone and they're providing budgeting advice, financial support, all that kind of thing. And I think this holistic approach is what really is making a difference to the lives of our tenants and their well-being. And the research has not only shown that, but it's shown that if tenants are happy, then they're more likely to be happy with our services that we provide. So I think with all that in mind, I think social housing should be celebrated. Too often there is negative commentary around social housing, and I like to think this research has really actually said, hang on a minute, social housing does provide a lot and it does make a real difference to people's lives. So what I'm hoping is that with the white paper and everything going on, that as we go forward and look to the future as our housing service, we take this holistic approach and it isn't just bricks and mortar, but we really do think of our service and what we can do to improve it at a holistic level and improve the lives, continue to improve the lives of our tenants and their outcomes and improve our service at the same time. So thank you, Chair. I'll leave it there. And then if you've got any questions, I will just ask, sorry, I did say I keep it brief. There is just one thing. I know some of you might be really interested to know what's going on at maybe your ward level. Now that's something that I obviously, the report hasn't touched on because again, that's going into huge amounts of detail and we spent a lot of time just trying to pull out the highlights of it. But if that is something that you'd be interested in knowing about, please just send me an email. I'm happy to deep dive into the data and try and find some stats for you if you would be interested. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Natalie. John?
Thanks, Chair. Fantastic piece of work, and thanks to Nat for doing this. Perhaps Debbie or Alethea could fix the links in this report, because mine don't seem to work at the moment, and that background and infographic information is really helpful for us to read and digest. I just wonder whether we can make use of this on a more of a national scale, and whether Natalie or University Live West are planning on, now the board have seen it and the councils have seen it, whether we can promote this work as piece of good practice work on the national stage. Thanks, Chair.
Yes. Okay. Thank you, John. Okay. Sorry.
Sorry.
Who is it? Natalie, sorry.
It's just me. Yeah, no, I just wanted to reassure John that yes, we are working with the University of Birmingham and still with Live West on that very thing to find out what we do next and how we communicate it out there. But I wanted just to hold fire until the board had seen it before we did any more. So I've got a meeting next week with Live West to discuss that.
Thank you, Natalie. Councillor Parr.
Thank you, Chair. Just to say I happily propose that. I think that's an absolutely brilliant idea that it be, as John said. Very good.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hall.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Natalie. I remember when the board actually made the quite right decision for you going to Birmingham Uni and doing all this research, and now we're actually seeing the rewards from it. So well done, you, and it's great stuff. And I really do endorse this approach. The holistic approach is exactly how we should be approaching everything when we're with any service of the public. And I totally endorse all of this. Strategically working with Live West, yeah, brilliant. And with what's already been said about looking at this, sharing this information, I would absolutely, once the board hopefully will agree on this, that make contact with Devon County Council, because this is so important, looking at all the data with what they're researching on. And you'll probably already know that a point of contact would be Simon Chant at Devon County. Very important information was coming out of this. And thank you very much for the areas about the local areas, which we're the ward members for. Because I mean, I've lived in this area for 50 years. Since the pandemic, I've actually realised how much I don't even know what's going on in my backyard. So I totally endorse it. With Councillor Parr's recommendation, I'll be more than happy to second it. And finally, continue the great work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Hall. Giles, do you want to?
Well, there are actually 6 recommendations, Chair.
Yeah,
so I mean, I will assume that the board will want to take the 6 as a block.
Yeah, please.
Would you like me to read them out, or are you happy just
I think we can assume everyone's read them.
I hope so.
I think for the benefit of those watching online, Giles, would you be kind enough to read them out?
Of course.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so yes, for the benefit of those watching at home, recommendation is 1, where appropriate, to use evidence from this research to support housing's decision making and service planning. Second recommendation, to ensure that all teams within housing have access to the advice and expertise of the mental health specialist for supporting East Devon tenants. 3, better understand the housing needs of those on the Devon Home Choice Register and support them on their housing journey. 4, continue to invest in our homes and neighbourhoods and ensure repairs and the programme works done to our properties are of a high standard. 5, support our universal credit claimants by helping them to maintain their tenancies and offer budgetary and financial advice where necessary. And number 6, to continue to work with others to provide more housing opportunities and choices for people living in East Devon. I think you've got a proposer and a seconder, Chair. So
we have. Chair, you happy for me to go to the vote? Although Councillor Helen Parr just popped.
Well, I was just going to say, can we add in the wording that John put forward about using this on a wider? in a wider way? Promoting.
So 7 would be use promoting so to use
John,
the results.
Yeah.
I don't know, John. Do you want to come up with some wording?
Yep. So to promote the research with our partners nationally, to promote the value of social housing.
Okay.
Thank you, John.
Okay.
Thank you.
Chair,
Have you got
Go
the word?
with vote?
Elise, sorry, because Alicia's got the words for there. I just make sure that Alicia's got the wording.
I have if she hasn't.
Okay.
Busy scribbling. Busy scribbling.
All right. Okay. Okay, Chair. Then it's we can go to the vote.
Okay, thank you, Deb.
Okay, thank you, Chair. So again, members of the board, when I call your name out, if you can say if you are for or against or you're abstaining. We'll start with you, Chair. Councillor McCullum.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Chamberlain.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Hall.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Parr.
For.
Councillor Taylor.
For.
Cindy Collier.
For.
Peter Sullivan.
For.
And Kat Summers. Thank you very much. Chair, that's carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Debbie. Okay, moving on to the next agenda item, number 15, COVID-19 performance and monitoring report. And I've got it done as Joe. Joe?
Thank you. This was just, I don't know whether, can we bring this up at all on the screen? Because all it was literally just to show people, to show members, to give them comfort about what we're actually monitoring on a weekly basis across the housing team. As John alluded to earlier, it does cover some areas of the compliance, but it also covers phone call demand across our service areas, also incidences and levels of antisocial behaviour. It covers rent levels, the levels of, obviously this one is just indicative, it's from several weeks ago now, if you are able to see it. It covers rent payment levels and also levels of our tenants that are in receipt of universal credit. It gives us an average across the year so that we can see, because obviously universal credit is paid incrementally, so it sort of levels that out so that we can see that everything is above board for everyone, stops people getting into larger arrears. We also monitor our voids through that. We are also able to monitor any long-term voids. So if we have properties that are consistently hard to let, they pop up on this now, so we can then look at them, see what the issues are, whether we need to do some additional works on those properties, or potentially whether we need to divest ourselves of those properties if the reason that they're constantly void is that nobody actually wants to live in that particular area, perhaps. We also monitor, as part of this report, the throughput through the housing allocations team. So that includes not just our homelessness provision, but also all of the applications through Devon Home Choice. And it's been really interesting this year, now that we have, and I'd have to say Natalie is a complete star. Natalie is the one that puts all of this together for us, and she is absolutely fabulous. And we keep adding little bits to it, so she's constantly having to add little bits as we go, oh, actually, it'd be really nice to know what's behind that particular figure. So yeah, we now have a comparator between last year and this year, so that's really good to see, especially around homeless figures and presentations to Devon Home Choice. Also, there is quite a stark little infographic down there where you can see just how much more reliance we have had to have this year on temporary accommodation. As Andrew alluded to earlier, especially during the pandemic, we've particularly seen a rise in homelessness presentations from families, mostly fleeing domestic violence, but also a rise in single homeless presentations as well. And then we also go on to talk about stuff that Councillor Chamberlain would be interested in. So that's all around the gas compliance and other areas of compliance within our building control. Also, there is now some information around any of the repairs, so whether the repairs are done in target or out of target. So we keep a benchmark of that. And also there's a really interesting, really useful chart that makes us understand exactly how we're doing against our emergency repairs. And you'd be pleased to know that we're currently 100% with managing our repairs. So that was just put in really for you to have some oversight into what we as a management team within housing look at on a weekly basis. This is just a snapshot. And as I say, Natalie is the one that runs all these figures for us and is constantly updating the forms so that we get everything that we need. So yeah, brilliant. So happy to take questions or otherwise, or info really.
Thank you, Joe. Right, anybody questions? Blue hands? No. Okay, sorry.
That report is just to note.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, thank you, Joe. Okay, moving on. We move on to hot now.
Item 16.
16, thank you. Which is Q2 Housing Performance Indicator Report, and again, it's Natalie.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I'll keep this brief. You get this report at most board meetings, so I don't think I need to present it too much. This is just Q2, so it's for your information, and I suppose it goes hand in hand now with the report, the weekly report that Joe has just presented to you. So it's got similar, but also some different stats in it as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Natalie? No. Okay, and I think it's just for information only again, Charles.
That's correct. Yep.
Okay, moving on to item 17.
So you'll need to ask. Just check this one out. You need to ask the vice chairman to read the.
Yeah, the vice chair's got a script to read.
and also, of course, to ask the DSOs to because this is a part B, so the feed will be turned off.
Yeah. Okay,
yeah,
Peter.
We'll just wait for Peter to do his performance. Yeah. Thank you, Peter.
Okay, thank you.
I'll get through the
agenda item 17, the exclusion of the press and the public. That under section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972, and in accordance with the local authorities' executive arrangements, meetings and access to information, England, Regulations 2012. The public, including the press, to be excluded from the meeting as exempt, and private information as set out against each Part B agenda item is likely to be disclosed, and on balance, the public interest is in discussing the item in private session, Part B.
Thank you very much. Oh, it's gone.
You're all gone.
All gone. Okay, Charles,
If you just